Hey, everybody. Intriguing chat today around what's happening at the forefront of cloud automation and orchestration with Quali. David, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Evan.
Well, thanks for being here. Hope it's not too hot in Austin, which is probably redundant, but great to have you here. Let's dive right in. Tell us about yourself and the mission at Quali.
Yeah, a little bit by myself, and I promise it will be very short. I've been in the industry many years. I've My focus really has been systems automation, operating systems management, network management. So really the IT management side of the equation. I've worked for BMC Software. I was a
Hmm.
CTO there. I was at IBM. Actually, I was at Tivoli. For those who
Hmm.
remember going back in the dark days, I was at Tivoli when we got acquired by IBM, and I ended up running the product group at IBM Tivoli. I was an analyst for 7 years at Gartner,
Oh,
which
okay.
focused me on all the stuff that we're going to be talking about today. So other companies I've been with, I was at prior to Quali. Um, I was at Computer Associates or CA
Hmm.
Technologies, based in California. Commuting backwards and forwards from Austin was an absolute delight. I can't tell you the time I did that, but I looked after the product strategy for CA Technologies right up to the point where it was acquired by Broadcom. So
Hmm.
that's pretty much me in a nutshell. I was brought up in London, England, and I moved over here in my late 20s. So I've been here quite a while. A little bit about Quali. I came to Quali after a very opportune conversation with the CEO, and he told me about Quali. I was familiar with the company. It's a company that had been doing a lot of development around sandboxes and infrastructure
Hmm.
automation that enabled companies to create test beds for their systems. It enabled them to take all their compute power and dice it up and slice it and manage it more effectively, and become, if you know, in some terms, an early provider of services like a cloud provider would. So it
Hmm.
enabled companies to basically do it themselves. And even to this day, one of the products that enables them to do that. This is Cloud Shell. It's still a low code, no code environment for companies that really want to understand and manage their own infrastructure. It can manage the cloud, it can do various other things, but it has a set of compute and enables you to do that service. This is something completely different than the product that I actually came in really, but which grabbed my attention was a product called Talk. Talk was much more of a DevOps product, that infrastructure automation. And of course, the one thing about cloud resources is you can't allocate within any definitive way the resources that you have available to you. It's very difficult to understand costs. It's difficult to understand the access and usage for the normal human beings in the world that want access to cloud. And when Leo, who's the CEO, spoke to me about it, it was very compelling. It was something that I thought would be extremely useful to do because it had never been cracked before. So and what I mean by cracked, there's never been a technology that really enabled a wide range of different skills, different people to get access to infrastructure in a common way without making them use something completely different that completely annihilated all their existing IP and skill. So it was a compelling opportunity to come in and build a technology that does something slightly different than what had been up to that point seen as being normal.
Fantastic. And fast forward to today, cloud automation, a very hot topic, also very competitive. How do you see yourself fitting on this landscape? And, how do you see yourself differentiated versus all the tech giants that are doing some work in this space? Like, what's your sort of competitive advantage here?
Well, it's useful to actually understand the backdrop that we're actually
Hmm.
looking at seeing to hold. So the backdrop is this: is that when DevOps was around, it was much more of a continuous delivery process. It empowered the engineer. So that's the one thing: empowerment of people that really want to have the freedom with which to get access to cloud resources
Hmm.
that didn't inhibit their ability to execute fast. So the last thing you want is to have to wait weeks for a provisions infrastructure service. You don't even want to wait hours. You want it immediately. So the IAC movement with companies like HashiCorp with Terraform came in and basically enabled developers to build what is essentially code as part of their deployment process of their application requirements. So they could build their code of the application, actually embed, if you want, or link into the infrastructure that's required to support that piece of the process. And that enabled them to get that. That was fantastic. So that enabled people to be very fast. But the biggest challenge is that when you have a significant amount of developers and a growing number of developers coming into the industry who do not have infrastructure skills, because it's not something that coders really have to learn initially. It's a skill set in its own right. You need to understand the connective tissue between all the components. Developers may not have those skills, and so IAC became a little bit of a wild west. Even though teams could work collaboratively and have sets of communication, when you look at business organizations, big corporations, they didn't really know what was going on in the cloud. They didn't. Some people were using different forms of IAC. Some people were using the more traditional configuration tools like Puppet and Chef. Ansible is a sort of a hybrid of that between the IAC and the configs. You have Helm and products like that looking after the containers. So you're actually looking at some very fragmented infrastructure automation building blocks here that you have to somehow work together, that when they're constantly changing, you can just imagine people's ears bleeding as they're trying to work out, okay, I've got this infrastructure stack, it's fairly complex, and now I've got to layer all these other things on top of it. How do I make that work? So really it was the complexity is extortionate today, and it's getting worse. The amount of skills is getting less in regards to infrastructure skills. And the business has now got its big feet in the equation. It's saying, we can't manage these costs. We need much better visibility into costs. I don't want to see it by account. I want to see it by app. I want to see it by pipeline. And so to do that, you need some consistency. So that's the differentiation that we have, is that within Quali, we built a technology that subsumes the existing IAC in the cloud environment. So the first thing we do is understand what is going on in the cloud, what is working in there automatically. So the first thing it does is it looks at your Git repository, looks at all the IAC files in there and all the infrastructure files, and it subsumes them in. And the second thing it does a thing called introspection. So it looks at all these different file types. So you and I could be building just using Terraform. You'd use Terraform slightly different to how I would use it. My structure of code would be different to yours, etc. So I want a way to actually make sure that what Evan does and what David does looks similar, so I can then associate common policies, common tagging, all the things that I want. So what we are really is a control plane that subsumes all the existing IP, turns it into normalized building blocks with which bigger environments can come in. So you can start dragging and dropping very simply and enabling you to build this environment, which has got data, integrations with it, much more expansive, much more standardized, and very repeatable. And it's integrated fully with IDPs, so developers wouldn't have to go to another product to learn it. They could use their own IDP. So the magic sauce really is, we discover it, we introspect it, we normalize it. We also have a lot of AI in the technology now. So you can, in the old days, you have to write scripts and put things in. Using Quali Talk, the newest technology that we just released, the newest functions, is that you and I could use natural language instructions to build. I want X amount of compute. I want to be able to manage my web interface for front end. I want my web service to be managed. And it would give you suggestions on, this is what you need, this is how you need it, as opposed to trying to work it out. So that is a massive differentiator that we've just put into the product, that if you want to use naturalized language with the likes of ChatGPT and other technologies like it, it is an interface that you can ask for something. It gives you what it believes is the right infrastructure that you need to do your job. It will tell you all the building blocks, and it will give you in a very easy to understand visual way, which means you don't have to go to MIT to learn how to use this thing. It's straight out of the box and easy to use.
Fantastic. Well, MIT would never accept me, and so that's good to know. But you guys are moving at cloud speed, clearly, with your AI integration. How does that work? Is this third-party technology? Do you integrate best of breed? Do you build this internally? What's your strategy for sort of introducing cutting-edge tech like AI, ML, but in general?
I mean, AI and ML, there's an awful lot of incredibly good open source out there. And so for some of the logic we'll go to the plethora of AI type of componentry. But for the logic and the data and the understanding about how you apply the AI to solve a specific problem, that's where it really wants. Because with automation, generally, there's when you do it manually, there are 3 logical steps. You create the automation, so you work out what you want, so you write the script on doing it. Then you run it, so the automation actually then runs it and deploys it, or builds it and then deploys it. And then you write another set of automation that says, did I just mess things up? Did this actually work? Did it work right? And so a lot of the work is actually done on that. And if you can imagine that at scale, that's a lot of coding and scripting. So we make all that pretty much go away, because all that's embedded in, and the natural language, the AI, will come in to make sure the execution's correctly. It makes sure that Evan has got guardrails. So if you go to do something a little bit crazy, it will remind you not to. It gives you the ability to actually look at the infrastructure in a more simplified way, in a more human type way. So it will tell you about computing, etc. You don't have to interpret the many lines of scripts. So we will leverage AI open source. We will build a lot of the logic within the AI, because obviously we understand how things connect, and we'll use it that way. But absolutely, we're not building another Watson, but we are leveraging all the AI capabilities today that enable you to get infrastructure with the least amount of friction and a seamless integration with all the work. We will use it to do guardrails. We do it a lot for reporting. So, for example, our product is automatic optimization of waste. So we'll look at dormant resources, over-provisioned resources. We then can make recommendations on what to do to fix it. And we will actually say, by removing these instances in the cloud, you're going to save an awful lot of money, in the same way that if you went in there for the first time, we could say, by doing it in this cloud, it's cheaper than this one, etc. So we give you options from the get-go, using knowledge and intelligence, all the way through to the reporting that enables the business to get a much better real-time understanding about what's going on.
A fantastic approach. And let's talk about the businesses, the customers you work with. Any success stories you care to share, without picking any favorite children, but would love to hear any real world applications or use cases or benefits you're allowed to talk about.
Sure. Yeah, it's absolutely. It's so when the product first came out, it was something new, because a lot of people have got so used to things like cloud management platforms, CMPs. It was like a sharper knife. You know, how different can this be? What exactly are you doing? Are you making us use another technology? So we had customers where we would use the Cloud Shell, the original test environment that we used to build, and we still have that product. It's still a low-code, no-code solution. That, by the way, is fully integrated with our Talk product, but it can be used that way. And some of those companies have found, ways of leveraging Talk as well for their DevOps and platform engineering teams. So they come to us because they know about the automation, so they use us that way. I will give you an actual example. The work we've done with Cisco, for example, is a good one of showing the value that we provide. Cisco have a DevNet service. They provide developer access to all their own, obviously, Cisco technologies. They enable developers to, develop things in their cloud, in the DevNet cloud. When it's provisioned and you go in and you look at it, you go through what is Quali's technology. It's white labeled. You can't see it per se, but we've been working with Cisco a long time. It's a great relationship. We're working with them because they also have an inordinate amount of scale they've got to put into this product. So they're putting in literally thousands of people a month for joining this service, and they want to make sure that it doesn't creak and doesn't provide too much angst. So they use a very specific component of our technology that enables developers to come in, have a frictionless engagement with the DevNet cloud environment. They get all the pieces, the tools, the environments they need in a catalog. They can choose the ones they need without actually going into a lot of the scripting, etc. They can bring their own stuff if they need to, but the fundamental point is that they can get all they need out of the box through a catalog interface with all the full controls that they would need. And that is and they're growing it exponentially. I mean, this thing is like crazy growth. So that just shows that we can do it at that level. And the same for a number of banks that are using us now. We've had a great 6 months in the product, because it's really got to this level of maturity where the industry is starting to sober up a bit and work out that control is important as well as freedom of innovation. So there's got to be that control without inhibitors. But it really took off at that period of time. So lots of banks are using us. In financial institutions generally, one in particular uses for cost management. So the first thing I want to do is get rid of all the cost, the waste, because it was disparate. And they had different IACs, they had an IDP, they had various other pieces of componentry. We provided the control plane on top of that, enables their developers to continue to work as they always did, but fundamentally accelerates them much faster using the catalog and the integrations. So this bank really wanted to manage its costs. That was the main thing. We're not a cost. We're not an Aptio. We're not a cost management product. But because we understand and we standardize the infrastructure, we can apply tagging in a consistent way as the environment, and we provide context, another differentiator. So context is why are you using it? And once you understand why you're using it, then you can associate it with service levels and priorities, which means that when you're looking at products like from ServiceNow and other technologies that live on service level agreements, we can actually provide the context with the infrastructure provision in line with prioritization of business, people's responsibilities, criticalities, etc. So it really is quite a lot I've just mentioned there, but it really is stemming from standardization, a subsuming of existing infrastructure, enabling easier use, and employing AI in a way that enables decisions to be made, where prior to that, it was always a little bit of a, I hope this works type of attitude.
Wow, fantastic approach. You mentioned a lot of partnerships as well as customers. Maybe talk about the ecosystem and the importance of those partners. How do you collaborate with companies like the hyperscalers and the tech giants that are out there? And what's the relationship like?
Yeah, it's really weird. A lot of the big guys, the CSPs, use us in their businesses. I'm not gonna, for many reasons I can't mention, but they are actually clients of ours, and they use us in various ways within their organization. So they use us for their own internal testing systems, etc. So we actually have. So even though what you're probably asking is, do they provide it, a DevNet experience at the front end? No, we haven't got anything along those lines, but we have got engagements going on where that is definitely not only just for these CSPs, but also for many other of the larger ones, like for example, NVIDIA, Intel, Hitachi. These are sort of companies that provide all these services that need that work. So we like to work with a lot of companies that are providing cloud services, and even though the big three, arguably four, are out there, depending on what part of the globe you're on. There is an awful lot of momentum from the newer cloud providers, which are coming up with these AI workloads, the NVIDIA-based GPU processing. And that brings in a whole range of complexities and challenges on infrastructure management that the traditional cloud never understood. For example, if you and I wrote a piece of code that would, that's basically providing a piece of AI, and you want to make sure that the model is working, typically AI goes out there and eats the world, because it's creating data. It's its own thing. That is completely alien to a lot of cloud. Can you imagine just saying to your boss, I'm just going to run this small program, and it goes out there and eats all the capacity for the budget that week? So that's the sort of thing that we can put governance and controls around. That's why we're working closely with a lot of companies that are looking at these extremely, not just ephemeral workloads, but workloads that just explode and retract in an instant, and really are very hard to work with. And our technology enables you to be able to manage that elasticity in a much more constructive way, with the policies aligned to usage and budgetary, etc. Which today, if you just use a traditional type approach, you would end up in debt very quickly, because, as I say, AI models will eat data, use data, and leverage all that sort of stuff very, very efficiently. But unfortunately, it's within itself. It will do it for itself. It won't say, oh, I'm about to break a cloud rule.
Oh, fantastic insight there. Without revealing anything confidential, of course, any preview or peek into your roadmap, what developments there might be on the horizon, and what can customers look forward to, I don't know, later this year?
Yeah, it's a cool time to be around, I tell you.
Mhm.
especially with the implementation of AI. That's the one thing that's really changing the game. So you're going to see an awful lot of decisions that can be made from the technology. So I think that the ability for infrastructure to be used in a safe, controlled way without it being an inhibitor to innovation has got to be around the ability for having a lot of frictionless background controls going in, letting people do what they need to do, but making sure that policies are being adhered to, that guardrails are being, kept within, that security is obviously managed, and the amount of intelligence that we're putting into that, you'll see it growing. So at the moment, we're very much focused on the onboarding, the creation. So the first time was with creation. It's okay to basically just do AI and ask it to do things, but to actually have it within context of an environment is a first. Going forward, we're going to be looking at the real-time aspects of how things are working, and that will obviously explode the ability for the AI to make decisions on behalf of human beings in a safe way, because it has to understand the rigors and I'm going to say the responsibilities on one area may impact the another area. So we want to make sure that the configurations are correct, and also on reporting and decision making around investment. So this will be, very basic stuff like to use this cloud would make more sense than this one due to these reasons: performance, makeup, cost. That will be automated, so we can actually provide that type of capabilities. And so you're going to see a lot of that work, but also the ability to manage diverse workloads is something that we're really heads down on. So no one is taken for granted when it comes to them running these much more AI workloads, and especially when you're pushing them out to the edge. Edge computing is a big thing for us too. So we want to make sure that irrespective of where the infrastructure is, we've got a footprint in it, because it's not just one cloud, it's multiple clouds. It's at the edge, and I dare to say it, there's on-prem requirements still today. People have not moved off-prem in the way that people imagine that everything's gone to the cloud. So we do have a very big capability of managing on-prem resources as well, which may have been very foolhardy to say 5 years ago. Oh yeah, we're managing the on-prem, but today people are still looking at on-prem being having an important role. So edge computing, the roles it has, the different cloud workloads, the serverless compute, etc. That's where we're really aiming to make sure that we dumb it down to the point where simplification is king, and people without, as I say, that education of infrastructure management can go in there and use it safely.
Fantastic approach. So you mentioned banking and financial services customers. They must have pretty stringent security and compliance, regulatory requirements. How
Yeah.
do you navigate that whole world given their concerns? And yeah, rightly so.
Yeah, I mean, there's the concerns about obviously the connectivity to the cloud, which is
Mm.
obviously something that we've been working on. So we've got all the typical security protocols adhered to, so people can connect their own infrastructure to our cloud. It's a Talk, which is the product we'll be talking about, is a SaaS product. It sits in the cloud, so basically it can just be pointed at different repositories. So the access to that is it. I think the biggest thing that we've got to obviously take in mind is access and being able to understand what's going on should also be tainted with the fact that you've also got to be protective of people's usage and how they use it, and obviously you've got to protect people's IP. So we are making sure that a lot of the technologies that we're providing can provide great insights to the consumers and the buyers of it, but don't necessarily get leveraged inordinately by ourselves and others that maybe want to use it. So we do run that line of making sure that you get all the full capabilities and the full insights, the full controls, but without breaching any confidentiality rules and any compliance rules. The other one is obviously we have some on-prem instances where some companies say we need that. So, for example, GovCloud would be, it's not an on-prem by any stretch of the imagination, but GovCloud is a typical example of how a very large, obviously global organization has said to the cloud providers, we need our own space. We can't have it shared with anybody else. And we're seeing a number of companies that are building their own sort of like mini GovCloud that want to be able to do that. So we've just got to be very agile and aware of the security implications of what we're doing, because technology is awesome right until it bites you. So We just got to make sure that we're aware of the ramifications of the enlightenment that we're providing a lot of the organizations.
Well done. Well, it's been an intriguing discussion. Just on a final note there, I see a couple of guitars. I assume those aren't just for display purposes. Do you play around Austin for those who might be in the area? Where can we see you?
If I do play around Austin, it'll be in a street somewhere outside of a bar with my hat. No, I took it up. I took up the guitar with a majority of other people when COVID hit. I decided that I was going to do
Well done.
something constructive in my late life, and they always say when you get to a certain age, piano and guitaring is out of the window. But I refused to agree to that. So
Oh,
yeah,
well
these
done.
guitars are actually they're real, even though I'm very much an acoustic guitarist now. I only found that out in the last year. So I'm afraid these electric guitars behind me are becoming a little bit more of a wall ornament.
Oh, what a great escape from the daily cloud wars. Thanks so much for sharing just the insight and the vision at Quali. Really intriguing stuff. Onwards and upwards. Congrats on all the success.
Thank you very much, Evan. It's been a
Thanks,
pleasure talking
thanks
to
for
you today.
joining, David, and thanks everyone for watching.